Bava METZIA Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis and Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Discounts and credit, Agar Natar. This piece of the Gemara deals with trade finance, because when you're offering credit to a buyer, you're doing that to facilitate trade, and there's a cost to the credit, is that interest. And what happens if you give a person a discount to pay up front, to pay in advance? Is that difference in the price that you're actually charging, the discounted price and the actual price, is that a case of interest? So these sugyas are complex, and in halakha they become complex in dealing with trade finance. And the essence of it is to determine, are you trading in commodity or are you trading in cash? Is this a financial transaction or is this a commercial transaction? And we know how today so many of the trading companies have become banks, because they've realized there's more opportunity in having credit cards and lending money and trade finance, and that's where they're making their profits at the moment. That's why wherever you go, they try and sell you a credit card, because they want to trade in your money. They want to trade in currency, which is ribis, which is exactly what the Torah doesn't want us to be doing, rather than buying and selling goods at normal commercial prices and making an honest profit in the process. So all of these pieces of Gemara really revolve around determining, is this trade or is this finance? It starts on Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis with a statement of Rav Nachman, Klala de Rivisa, a principle in ribis is Kol Agar Natar Le Asur. Any charging somebody for holding onto his money is also, that's ribis. Charging a rate, a fee for the time component of money, that's ribis. And then Rav Nachman goes and gives an example of a person who is selling wax kind of candles, and he would give a discount for somebody who would pay, for people who would pay him before he'd even bought the wax or bought the candles, so that financed his trade. Are you allowed to do that or you're not allowed to do that? And the Gemara comes to the conclusion that it depends whether he has it accessible or not. But the principle of Agar Natar, Rashi says, is Schar Hamtana, paying for holding of money. If you're giving him a discount because he pays early, and the seller doesn't have the product, he's using your money to finance his trade, that's ribit. If he has the product and you're just paying up front and you're getting delivery later, that's not ribis. And the Ritvo says, Afilu zuli b'mechem mishum arvachat zman asir, even if it's not just giving the discount, even if you're charging extra for later payment. And the old Ritvo, you remember I explained to you, we have two Ritvos in Bava METZIA. We used to think the Ritvo that we had was the Ritvo, but it's another Rishon. And he says that it depends on how clear you are, if you actually articulate, or if it's implied that you're paying for the finance. That's ribis. If it's not clear whether you're just paying a different price because the prices go up and down, and today the price is X, tomorrow or next week the price will be Y, that can all be worked out in normal business. So what these sugyas are trying to do is to separate normal trade, which is allowed, even when that involves different price levels and payment at different times, with ribis when you're trading in the finance and you're not trading in the commodity. That's what one has to do in these halachas. They're enormously complex. Rav Ishon here, our Rav in Ra'anana, wrote a very important work on some of the practicalities of credit in trade. Then on the next daf, on Daf Samach Daled, Omar Rav Kahana, there's a story. And it's about the story actually that I want to talk about today. Omar Rav Kahana have a yativna b'shili pirke de rove. In the Rif it's Rove, in our Gemara it's Rav, but it's quite clear that it's Rove. Rav Kahana was a talmid of Rove. Rove is a big expert in this area of halacha. We see him over and over again. He came to Rove's shir at the end. You see, it's not only the Matmonim that people come in at the end when they get ready for davening shachris. Even Rove used to give a shir, and Rav Kahana came in at the end of the shir. And now the danger, what happens? V'shami tika amar kari kari. And he heard that Rava was talking about pumpkins, or marrows, gourds, whatever, a very big kind of a vegetable. That's what he was talking about. V'lo yadana ma'ika amar, he didn't know what it was about. And here's the danger. So today, you would say to the person, what was the shir about? You said, a shir about pumpkins. But Rav Kahana realized that wasn't the case, so he waited till afterwards. Basad the Kam Rava, after Rava left, Amri Lahu, he asked the Talmidim, my keri keri dikama Rava, what is this pumpkins that Rava has been talking about? What was the shir about? Amruli, they said to him, Hachika Amar Rava, this is what Rava taught. Hi man, there was a story, there was a case, the Yaev Liginoi Akari, that was paying the farmer for his pumpkins, and he was offering 10 pumpkins for a zuz. And he said to him, if you pay now, I will give you pumpkins twice this size for the same price. So he hasn't changed the price, he's just offering bigger pumpkins. Then itnu shari letnu osu. If he has the pumpkins, it's okay. If he's going to buy the pumpkins later, then it's also. Pshita, isn't that obvious? As the Gemara, I might have thought that since he's bought these young pumpkins that are only half an amal long, and he's waiting for those same pumpkins to grow into full pumpkins that are an amal long, therefore maybe it's not ribis. However, Rava was teaching that since at this moment he doesn't have them, so he's not selling something he's got, he's selling something he will have, and he's taking the money before he has it, that is ribis. Ikidamri, and there's another version that's not the case, that since these pumpkins are going to naturally grow into bigger pumpkins, it's not ribis. This is just all part of the delightful, nuanced complexity of the laws of ribis and how to navigate our ways through trade and finance. And we just take it for granted that it doesn't matter and it's all okay the way we do business today, but it's not so simple at all. But what's interesting as an aside is why the story? Why not just tell us the outcome? Why does the Gemara not just say there was a man who was paying a gardener? Why the story that Rav Kahana came at the end of the shir and he heard about pumpkins and he asked the talmidim what was Rava teaching about and then the story. Why give us all that? And it's seldom that anybody would even notice that, but somebody who does notice that is Rabbi Leib Gurvitz. So a little bit about Rabbi Leib Gurvitz and his son Rabbi of Ohr Ra'anan. Rabbi of Ohr Ra'anan is one of the Gedolei Hador today, one of the greatest of our Gedolei Yisrael today is the Rosh Yeshiva of Geitzed Yeshiva. His father was Rabbi Leib Gurvitz, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Geitzed Yeshiva before him. Rabbi Leib Gurvitz is a son-in-law of Rabbi Lapin. He married Rabbi Elia's oldest daughter. The story was very interesting because when Rabbi Elia went to Europe, where Rabbi Leib was learning in Mir, to arrange for the shidduch, and they agreed on the shidduch, the deal was that his daughter Liba would go from London back to Poland and stay in Mir so that Rabbi Leib could carry on learning in Mir. At that time, while they were engaged, Rabbi Elia's wife died very young, in her 40s, and left him with 13 children. Liba was the oldest of the daughters, and she decided she needs to stay home and take care of the family. So she wrote to Rabbi Leib and said, I'm asking you to break the shidduch. I can't keep my side of the bargain. I can't come to Europe. So Rabbi Leib went to the Chofetz Chaim, who was very old at the time, and said, what do I do? Do I break the shidduch and stay in Mir? Or do I go to London, where my fiancé has to be? And the Chofetz Chaim wouldn't answer. All he would say, he kept on saying, Baruch Podeu Matzil, Baruch Podeu Matzil. Praised is Hashem who redeems and saves Jews. Baruch Podeu Matzil. Rabbi Leib said he understood exactly what that meant. He packed up and went to London, and that saved him. It was just before the Second World War, and that saved him. He was able to live in London. He was a Rov in London, then became the Rosh Yeshiva of Geitzed, and Rabbi Avrom, his son, became a Gadol Ador. They were both Gedolei Yisrael. When I came to Kfar Hasidim in the 1960s after school, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Elia Mishkovsky, wouldn't let me into his shir. He said I didn't know enough, I wasn't ready for his shir, and nothing I could do would persuade him otherwise. So I said, then I'm leaving, then I'm going. So I went off to Geitzed to Rabbi Avrom, who was my cousin, and I said, Rabbi Avrom at that time was a brilliant young Rosh Yeshiva. He was a talmid of Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rov's son in Yerushalayim. Brilliant Maggid Shir, and a talmid of his own father, of Rabbi Leib. And I said, will you teach me for a year? Can I learn with you for a year, and then I'll go back to Kfar Hasidim and I'll go to Rabbi Elia Mishkovsky Shir, which I did, and it was a most wonderful year, where he really taught me the foundations of learning in unbelievable ways. He has written a sefer now called Anfei Erez. Erez is Reb Aryeh Ze'ev, which is Reb Leib Gurvitz. And Anfei Eretz is the branch of the Erez, the branch of the cedar. So he regards himself as the branch of his father. And he comments in passing, this Rabbi Lapin, this is typical of Rabbi Lapin. He quotes his father on this piece of Gemara. And I've told you many times, I didn't have the schus of learning in Rabbi Lapin's shir, but I was very, very close to him. And I've told you, I think, that at that time I was learning Chavrusa with my cousin, Rabbi David Lapin, and every day at 4 o'clock we used to walk across the street to go and have tea with Rabbi Lapin and Auntie Liba. Imagine what an opportunity. Sit with a Godel B'Yisrael every day and have a half an hour having tea. And during tea time, we put on a lot of weight during that time because Auntie Liba was a great baker. During that time, we used to listen to the BBC News, and Rabbi Lapin used to teach us how to understand the news through the eyes of the Torah. Each time was a training, mentoring in how to understand world events. What an opportunity. So that same Rabbi Lapin, it's the Rabbi of Ohr Ra'anan writes on the next page of the sources, "V'he'ir Adoni avi mori v'Rabbi Agon HaTzadik." And my father, my teacher, my master, the tzaddik, talking about his father, made the following note. He says, the story is there, it only mentions pumpkins twice. Ufirish Rashi, but Rashi says, Shamati Doreshu Maskir Duluyan Tamid. I noticed that he's constantly talking about pumpkins. So Rabbi Lapin asks, where does he see constantly talking about pumpkins? He mentioned pumpkins twice. Where does Rashi get this from? V'amar Rabbi Lapin explained that the muvuar she'oto memret simtzem lemilim sfurot shiur shel harbei arichut dvarim. This piece of Gemara, the story, is concentrated down into just a few words, but it really was a major issue, a major shir. And you need to understand this with any story that's brought in the Gemara. It's just the essence of a very deep discussion. And you've got to learn it and understand it that way. And he brings the Rambam in the opening to Perish HaMishnayos. I've gathered together what I learned from my father, V'zulato b'shem Rabbeinu Yosef HaLevi, and what he learned from the Rimi Gash. The understanding of the Rimi Gash in the Gemara is beyond human. Anybody who takes the time to go deeply into the Rimi Gash, there was nobody before the Rimi Gash who had such clarity in his way of learning, says the Rambam about the Rimi Gash. And I've seen that in the name of the Rimi Gash saying that his Rebbe, the Rif, used to give shiurim 6 hours long. Today we can barely manage a 20-minute shiur. The Rif would give a shiur for 6 hours. The Rimi Gash and his friends would sit with wet cloths on their foreheads because they were sweating from the intensity of listening. They had migraines at the end of the shiur, from the depth of the words. But every yeshiva bocher learns the Rif. You don't see any depth. It's a summary of the Gemara. You page through it. Unless you really apply yourself to it. And it's interesting that Reb Motel, previous Rosh Yeshiva of Telz Yeshiva, says that when he was in Telz, there was the great Ilui in Telz, was Reb Motel Pagamansky, one of the geniuses of Telz. And Reb Motel Pagamansky told him, it used to bother him enormously. Reb Motel used to spend 15 hours to understand a piece of Reb Chaim Brisker. And today, every yeshiva bocher, Reb Chaim says this, Reb Chaim makes a chekira, Reb Chaim says that, they're quoting Reb Chaim. And he said that unless you understand the storm of the Ragatshova goes into the complexity. It's very hard to understand the Ragatshova because he just sees the full complexity. He says, unless you go into the storm of the complexity of the Ragatshova, you can't appreciate the calm that Reb Chaim brings to the sugya. You just read the calm straight away without having gone through the storm. What's it worth? What have you really understood? You've understood nothing. And that's why Motel says, I spent 15 hours to understand a little piece of Reb Chaim, and Yeshiva Bochrim are throwing Reb Chaim around as if it's a simple thing. And he talks about the importance, as does Rabbi Lapin here, of understanding that what we have, not just in the Gemara, we talk about the Rimigash, we talk about the Rif, we talk about Reb Chaim Brisker, they concentrated their words into just a few little words to give you the essence, assuming that you'll invest the time to reflect, to think, to go deep into things. Somebody said to me just the other day about our very shir, if somebody would just spend their whole day on the Matmonim, how much they could be going into the various makoros, going into the ideas, taking the ideas further, looking into them. How much could they just spend to reflect on the things? Each day we come up with a new principle, and that's the case with any learning. If one applies oneself deeply to what Chazal are telling us, you come to a mind-boggling idea if you go deeply, but you've got to allow yourself the time to think, to reflect, to analyze, to absorb, to intuit it. And when it becomes part of you, when you really have integrated it, to be able to now review everything you've learned and see it all through this new lens, what that does for the growth of the character, what that does for the growth of the intellect, what that does for the growth of the soul. But we don't give ourselves the time. We're in such a rush to get onto the next thing. It's just part of our generation, such a rush to get onto the next thing that we just don't have the opportunity to allow ourselves to absorb. We do it with everything in life. The idea of fast food. Fast food is et stira minei uvei. Food isn't fast. Food is slow. How long do you have to wait between fleischiks and milchik? You have to wait 5 or 6 hours. That's how long it takes to integrate food. And we talk about fast food, and we run, and we grab, and we take, and we eat, and we consume. And we do it with the things that we read, and we do it with the things that we learn, and we do it with relationships, and we do it with conversations, always on to the next thing. And we lose the opportunity to really nourish ourselves and grow and develop through an engagement with the learning, in thinking that you've got to cover, you've got to do the next page, you've got to get to the end of the page, you've got to learn another Masechta. Why? You've got to grow. That's what's important. You've got to grow. And the growth comes from how deeply you go, not just from how much you cover. And one has to try and figure out a balance of that, where, yes, one covers ground, but not at the expense of digestion. Because then you get indigestion, and it does nothing for your growth at all. And we see here just the story in passing, and the Rashi, and Rabbi Lapin just noticing the Rashi and mentioning it to his son Rabbi of Ohr Ra'anan, and Rabbi of Ohr Ra'anan thinking it's important enough to include in his sefer. Just noticing this keri, the pumpkin story, and realizing how Rashi points out that this is much more than just a passing a reference to pumpkins. There's a deep shir that was over here. All we have is a passing reference, but Rashi says he understood that this whole shir was about the pumpkins, because these pumpkins, these gourds, are very large vegetables, and you can buy them at different stages of growth. That's what the shir is about. It's not about the pumpkin. It's about the idea of prepaying for potential growth. And at what point is that trading in the pumpkin, in the commodity that is growing and developing? And at what extent is that borrowing money in order to fund the growth that would apply with buying and selling businesses today? This is something much bigger, and all of that is part of the keri that Rashi says. I understood that he was talking over and over again about this idea of the pumpkin. What was the yesod? What was the foundation? What is unique about pumpkins that Rov had to spend a whole shir on it? And from that we learn also, as Rabbi David teaches us, how to understand we only see the tip of the iceberg when we look at the words of the Gemara, of the Rishonim, and of the Gedolei Achronim. We only see the tip of the iceberg, and we have to probe ourselves to get deeper and deeper, and to be able to see the whole organism, and to be able to understand what the inyan is really about in order to grasp the Torah.